My beloved child, pause here for a moment, because what is reaching you now did not arrive by accident. Your person has just learned something about you, something they were not ready to understand before, and now the silence around them does not feel the same. They thought they knew your heart. They thought they understood why you pulled away, why you stayed quiet, why your eyes carried both love and distance at the same time. But heaven allowed the truth to rise in a way they could not ignore. And now, nothing inside them is resting. Do not skip this, because the first thing heaven wants you to know is this: they did not learn a small detail. They learned the reason you changed, the reason you stopped chasing, the reason your soul became quieter, the reason your love was never weakness, it was protection. For a long time, they only saw the surface of your actions. They saw your silence and misunderstood it as coldness. They saw your distance and thought you were moving on without feeling anything. They saw your strength and believed you were unaffected. But today, the veil around their understanding has been touched. A memory came back to them. A conversation returned. A detail they ignored before suddenly began to glow inside their spirit. And the moment it connected, something in them broke open. Not with fear, not with panic, but with realization. They finally understood that you were not being difficult. You were wounded while still trying to love them gently. You were carrying pain they never saw because you refused to turn your suffering into noise. You were protecting your dignity while still praying for peace. And now they are sitting with that truth. Stay till the end, because what heaven is revealing is not only about what they discovered. It is about what is about to change because of it. Your person has been moving through their days with a strange heaviness lately. They may not have shown it. They may have smiled, answered messages, continued routines, and pretended everything was normal. But their spirit has not been normal. There has been a quiet disturbance around them. A restlessness. A repeating thought. A name that kept rising no matter how much they tried to push it down. Your name. And when they heard it, saw it, remembered it, or felt it within them, something shifted. Because your name no longer sounded like someone from the past. It sounded like unfinished truth. They began to realize that the version of you they had judged was not the full version. They had only seen the chapter where you became silent. They had not seen the pages where you were breaking. They had not seen the nights you held your heart together without telling anyone. They had not seen how many times you wanted to explain yourself, but something inside you whispered, let them see it when they are ready. And now, they are becoming ready. Heaven did not force this moment. Heaven arranged it. A small sign entered their path. A sentence. A reminder. A person mentioning something casually. A memory they thought was buried. And suddenly, the truth stood before them like a door opening in a dark room. They realized you were not asking for too much. You were asking to be understood. They realized you were not leaving because you stopped caring. You were stepping back because your soul could no longer survive being unseen. They realized your love was deeper than they had measured. And that realization is not leaving them alone. They are replaying moments now. Moments where they could have listened better. Moments where your eyes said more than your mouth. Moments where your silence was not emptiness, but a final attempt not to break down. And the more they remember, the more their heart begins to tremble with a truth they cannot escape. You were real. Your love was real. Your patience was real. Your pain was real. And they did not recognize it in time. But listen carefully, beloved child. Heaven is not showing you this to keep you trapped in the past. Heaven is showing you this because something is being corrected in the unseen. There are truths that do not arrive loudly. Some truths enter quietly, sit beside a person, and make them unable to sleep the same way again. This is what has happened. Your person has learned something that changed the way they see you. And now the old story they told themselves is collapsing. They can no longer say, they did not care. They can no longer say, they moved on easily. They can no longer say, they were the problem. Because heaven has placed evidence before their spirit. Not evidence to shame them. Evidence to awaken them. They are beginning to understand that you were fighting battles they never asked about. You were healing wounds they did not know they had touched. You were carrying love with one hand and disappointment with the other. And somehow, you still try to remain kind. That is what is shaking them. Not only what happened, but how you remain gentle even after it happened. There is a sacred kind of strength that heaven hides in certain souls. It does not shout. It does not announce itself. It does not beg to be seen. It keeps choosing light while carrying shadows. And you, beloved child, have carried that kind of strength. This is why your person cannot feel the same anymore. Because when the truth about you reached them, it did not only reveal your pain. It revealed your value. It revealed how rare your heart has been. It revealed how many times you could have become bitter, but chose stillness instead. It revealed how many times you could have exposed everything, but chose grace. It revealed how many times you could have walked away with anger, but walked away with prayer. And now, in a way they cannot explain, they feel heaven pointing back toward you. Not as a demand, not as pressure, but as a holy reminder. Look again. That is the message moving around them. Look again at the one you misunderstood. Look again at the one whose silence you misread. Look again at the one who loved you while hurting. Look again at the one whose absence now feels louder than their presence ever did. They are looking, and what they are seeing is changing them. But there is something even deeper. They did not just learn the truth about what happened to you. They learned the truth about what you meant to them. That is the part they were not prepared for. Because sometimes a person only realizes the weight of a soul when that soul no longer stands close enough to be taken for granted. Sometimes absence becomes the mirror that presence could never become. And your absence has been speaking. It has been speaking in the quiet moments. It has been speaking through songs, places, memories, and sudden emotions. It has been speaking through the strange ache they feel when they remember how naturally your energy once fit beside theirs. They try to explain it away. They try to distract themselves. They try to convince their heart that time would make everything simple. But time did not erase you. Time revealed you. And now your person is beginning to understand something heaven knew all along. You were not just someone who crossed their path. You were a turning point. You were a mirror. You were a lesson. You were a blessing they did not fully know how to hold. And now, after learning the truth, they are asking themselves a question they may not say out loud yet. What if I misunderstood the person who cared for me the most? That question is not small. That question is shaking the foundation of what they believed. Because once a person begins to question the story they used to protect their pride, their heart becomes vulnerable to truth. And truth, beloved child, has entered. There is a reason this message found you now. Not yesterday. Not when you were begging for answers. Not when your heart was still breaking open every night. Now, because you are no longer in the same place you were when this first wounded you. You have grown. You have become quieter in a stronger way. You have learned that love without understanding can become heavy. You have learned that not every apology heals what only changed behavior can repair. You have learned that your soul is not meant to keep proving its purity to someone who refuses to see. And heaven is proud of you for that. But now, as you are becoming steady, the truth is reaching them. Isn't it strange how heaven works? When you wanted to be understood, they could not hear. When you stopped explaining, the truth began speaking for you. When you stopped chasing, heaven began arranging. When you released the need to be seen, their eyes began to open. This is not coincidence. This is divine timing moving with quiet precision. Your person has entered a moment where they cannot return to ignorance. They cannot unlearn what they now know. They cannot unfeel the weight of what has been revealed. And they cannot keep pretending that nothing changed, because something has changed, inside them, around them, between you. Even if no message has been sent yet, even if no call has been made, even if the outer world still looks silent, in the unseen, movement has begun. And heaven wants you to recognize the difference between silence and stagnation. Silence does not always mean nothing is happening. Sometimes silence means heaven is working where human words would interfere. Sometimes silence means a heart is being prepared. Sometimes silence means a person is finally sitting with the truth long enough for it to transform them. Your person is sitting with something, and they are not comfortable, because the truth about you has touched the place inside them that still remembers. It remembers your kindness. It remembers your patience. It remembers how you made them feel understood even when they did not understand you back. It remembers the way your energy felt safe. It remembers the way you looked at them like you could see past their defenses. And now they are realizing how rare that was. But beloved child, there is another part. A part heaven wants to reveal gently. Someone around them may have said something. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough. Enough to shift their perspective. Enough to make them pause. Enough to make their chest tighten with recognition. Perhaps someone defended you when you were not there. Perhaps someone mentioned how much you endured. Perhaps someone revealed a piece of your story they never knew. Perhaps they saw something that proved your heart was sincere all along. However it happened, heaven used it. Because heaven can use one sentence to open a locked heart. Heaven can use one memory to expose a false story. Heaven can use one quiet moment to begin a transformation no one saw coming. And this is why your person feels different now. They may be trying to hide it, but their spirit knows. Their heart knows. Their thoughts know. Something about you has become impossible to dismiss. And the more they try to move normally, the more the truth follows. It meets them when they wake. It enters their mind during ordinary tasks. It stands beside them when they hear your name. It comes alive when they remember the last look, the last message, the last moment they failed to understand what your soul was really saying. They are not only remembering you, they are re-seeing you. And re-seeing is powerful, because when someone sees you again with awakened eyes, they do not meet the same version of you they once judged. They meet the truth they missed. They meet the grace they overlooked. They meet the pain they contributed to. They meet the love that was stronger than their awareness. And when that happens, nothing stays the same. Not their emotions. Not their pride. Not their excuses. Not the story. Your person's inner world is beginning to rearrange itself around this revelation. And heaven is allowing it because there are things that needed to be known before any next chapter could begin. Some connections cannot move forward until truth stands in the middle. Some hearts cannot soften until they are shown what they lost. Some souls cannot speak honestly until they stop defending the lie they once believed. That is what is happening. The false version of you is being removed from their mind. The real version is rising. And the real version carries weight. The real version carries beauty. The real version carries holy evidence. You were not perfect, beloved child. Heaven is not saying you never made mistakes, but your heart was sincere. Your intentions were deeper than they understood. Your love was cleaner than the confusion around it. Your silence was not meant to punish. It was meant to survive. And your person is beginning to know that. There is a trembling that happens when someone realizes they were loved better than they realized. They begin to feel regret differently. Not the kind that disappears after a day. The kind that sits in the spirit and says, "You need to face this." Your person is being invited to face it. Not because heaven wants them broken, but because heaven wants truth to do what pride never could: heal what was hidden, reveal what was denied, awaken what was asleep. And beloved child, this is why you have been feeling strange too. You may have sensed something shifting before you had any proof. You may have felt their energy moving around your thoughts. You may have wondered why old memories were returning. You may have found yourself suddenly emotional without knowing why. That was not weakness. That was spiritual sensitivity. Your soul was sensing movement. Your spirit was picking up the echo of a truth being revealed on the other side. Because some connections are not only held by words. They are held by energy, memory, and divine assignment. When one heart begins to awaken, the other sometimes feels the vibration. You felt something because something was happening. And now heaven is confirming it. Your person has learned the truth. But what they do with that truth is the next mystery. That is where the tension is. That is where heaven is still working. Because learning the truth is one thing. Having the courage to respond to it is another. They are standing between realization and action. Between pride and honesty. Between fear and humility. Between the old version of themselves and the person they know they must become if they are going to approach you differently. This is not a small bridge. It is not easy for a person to admit they misunderstood someone who once loved them deeply. It is not easy to face the moment when they should have listened but did not. It is not easy to accept that the person they thought would always be there had to step back to protect their own soul. But heaven is pressing gently, not with force, with truth. And truth has a way of making the comfortable impossible. They may try to distract themselves, but the truth will wait. They may try to stay busy, but the truth will sit beside them. They may try to act unchanged, but the truth will speak through their dreams, their memories, their pauses, their sudden silence. Because once heaven reveals something, it does not easily become unseen. And there is a reason the revelation came now. Your person needed to see the truth after you had already begun reclaiming yourself. Because if they had seen it too soon, you might have run back into the same cycle before the foundation changed. Heaven protected you from premature repair. Heaven allowed distance to teach what closeness could not. Heaven let silence mature both hearts in different ways. And now the truth has arrived like a quiet flame, not to burn everything down, but to illuminate what was real. You are being asked to remain grounded. Do not rush. Do not panic. Do not assume. Do not collapse back into old longing just because their heart is waking. Let heaven complete the work. Because the revelation is only the beginning. The next part is transformation. And transformation cannot be faked. A person can miss you and still not be ready. A person can regret and still not know how to repair. A person can learn the truth and still need time to become strong enough to honor it. So heaven says, watch the fruit, not the feeling. Watch the action, not the emotion. Watch the consistency, not the sudden intensity. Because you are not being prepared for another cycle of confusion. You are being prepared for clarity. Your heart has already survived too much to accept half-truths dressed as love. You have already grown too much to return to a place where your spirit has to beg to be seen. And this is why heaven is making the truth undeniable. If they come toward you, they must come with awakened eyes. If they speak, they must speak from sincerity. If they return, they must return with understanding, not just longing. Because your soul is not a waiting room for someone else's confusion. Your heart is sacred ground. And sacred ground must be approached with humility. Your person is beginning to feel that. They may not have the words yet, but they feel the weight of approaching you differently. They know something old cannot continue. They know the same excuses will not work. They know the same emotional distance will not be enough. They know the truth they learned has changed the requirement. Because once someone knows the depth of what you carried, they can no longer treat you lightly without betraying what they now understand. That is why nothing will ever be the same. Not because everything is suddenly solved, but because ignorance has ended. And when ignorance ends, accountability begins. When accountability begins, the soul must choose. Will they grow? Will they speak? Will they repair? Will they surrender pride? Will they honor what heaven revealed? This is the question hanging over them now, and it is also the question heaven is keeping open for part of this story, because there is one more truth they have not fully faced yet, one truth that sits beneath everything they just learned, one truth about why your connection never left them, even when they tried to move forward. And when that truth rises completely, their next move may reveal what their heart has been hiding all along. A strange stillness has settled around your person. Not the kind of stillness that comes from peace. Not the kind that comes from certainty. This is the stillness that appears when a soul stands in front of a truth it can no longer escape. And beloved child, what is happening now goes deeper than anything they expected. Because after learning the truth about what you carried, after finally seeing the pain behind your silence, after understanding that your distance was never a lack of love, another realization began to emerge, a realization they were never prepared for. Stay with this message. Something important is unfolding, because what heaven is revealing now is the very thing your person has been trying not to face. At first, they believed the revelation was only about you. They believed the lesson was about your experience, your feelings, your sacrifices, your wounds. But slowly, almost painfully, they began to understand that the truth was not only revealing who you were, it was revealing who they became after losing you. That realization struck differently, because suddenly the focus shifted. No longer were they only looking at your heart, now they were being forced to look at their own. And that is where the real transformation began. There are moments in life when a person discovers something about themselves they never wanted to see. Moments when every distraction stops working. Moments when every excuse begins to sound hollow. Moments when the soul whispers, "Be honest." Your person has entered one of those moments. The version of themselves they showed the world no longer feels convincing. The stories they told themselves no longer feel complete. The reasons they used to justify everything suddenly feel weak. Because truth has a way of exposing what pride tries to protect. And pride has been losing ground. Every day, little by little, without anyone noticing. Your person may still look the same from the outside. They may still smile, still work, still answer messages, still continue life as if everything is normal. But inside, a conversation has started. A conversation they cannot silence. A conversation between their heart and their conscience. Between memory and reality. Between what happened and what should have happened. The more they reflect, the more they recognize something they never fully understood before. You were never asking for perfection. You were asking for presence. You were never demanding impossible things. You were asking to be valued. You were never trying to control them. You were trying to protect something sacred between you. And suddenly, everything looks different. The moments they once dismissed now feel important. The words they ignored now echo loudly. The silences they misunderstood now make sense. It is almost as if heaven handed them a completely different version of the same story. Except this version contains details they were blind to before. And beloved child, those details are changing everything. Because now they remember the small things. The things they overlooked. The way your voice changed when you were hurting. The way you tried to communicate without creating conflict. The way you gave chances nobody knew you were giving. The way you waited longer than most people would have waited. The way you kept showing grace even when disappointment was already sitting in your heart. Those memories have become impossible to ignore. And every time one returns, it brings another question, another realization, another piece of truth, until eventually they arrive at a thought they never expected to think. What if they loved me far more than I realized? That question has been growing, quietly, relentlessly, like a seed heaven planted in the center of their heart. And now that seed is breaking open, because love looks different when viewed through hindsight. Things that seemed ordinary suddenly become extraordinary. Things that seemed small suddenly become precious. Things once taken for granted suddenly become irreplaceable. And this is exactly where your person finds themselves now, looking backward, seeing differently, understanding more, feeling more, realizing more, yet still not knowing what to do with it. That is the tension. That is the struggle. That is why their spirit feels restless. Because knowledge creates responsibility, and responsibility demands a response. There is something huge waiting on the other side of this realization. Your person can feel it, even if they cannot name it yet, even if they do not fully understand it. They feel it. The old version of their thinking is collapsing. The old assumptions no longer fit. The old narrative no longer works. And when a false narrative falls apart, a person must rebuild. But rebuilding requires honesty. And honesty requires courage. This is why heaven has been slowing them down. You may have wondered why certain things seemed delayed, why certain conversations never happened, why certain answers never arrived, why certain doors stayed closed. Beloved child, some doors stayed closed because heaven knew a deeper lesson had to happen first. The lesson was never only about separation. The lesson was about awakening. Your person needed to discover what your absence actually meant, not intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, deeply, because there is a difference between missing someone and understanding their value. Many people miss what is familiar. Many people miss comfort. Many people miss attention. But understanding value, that changes a person. Understanding value transforms behavior. Understanding value creates gratitude. Understanding value produces humility. And humility is finally entering places pride once occupied. That is why heaven keeps saying, do not judge this process by appearances. Because appearances rarely reveal spiritual movement. A person can look calm while their soul is being rearranged. A person can appear distant while their heart is waking up. A person can remain silent while heaven is rewriting everything inside them. Your person is being rewritten, slowly, carefully, precisely, and every revelation is leading toward one unavoidable truth. You mattered more than they admitted, far more. Not because you were perfect, not because you never made mistakes, but because your presence touched parts of their life that nobody else touched. You saw things others missed. You understood things others overlooked. You offered something rare. And now they are beginning to recognize just how rare it truly was. This recognition is creating another layer of realization. One they have barely spoken aloud. One they may not even fully understand yet. Because somewhere deep within them, a question has started repeating. Not once. Not twice. Again and again. What if I never actually replaced them? That question has been haunting them. Because the truth is becoming impossible to deny. No matter how much time passes. Something about you remains. Something about your energy remains. Something about your memory remains. Something about your impact remains. And every attempt to compare others to you quietly ends the same way. Different faces, different voices, different personalities, yet somehow, not you. And that realization has become heavier than they expected. Because now they are beginning to see that your connection was never ordinary. Not ordinary affection. Not ordinary timing. Not ordinary attachment. There was something deeper. Something heaven planted. Something heaven protected. Something heaven refused to let disappear completely. And this understanding has created a shift in their spirit. A shift they cannot explain. Because for the first time, they are no longer asking what went wrong. They are asking what was real. And beloved child, that question changes everything. Because when a person starts searching for what was real, truth begins to surface everywhere. They begin noticing details they ignored, patterns they overlooked, moments they forgot, signs they dismissed, until eventually, the picture becomes impossible to avoid, and the picture forming inside your person's heart is not what they expected, because the deeper they go, the more they discover that the connection they thought they understood was only partially understood. There were layers beneath the surface, layers of loyalty, layers of sacrifice, layers of patience, layers of spiritual growth, layers of love, and those layers are finally being seen. This is why heaven keeps urging you not to rush ahead. Do not assume the ending. Do not force the next chapter. Do not let impatience steal your peace, because something sacred is still unfolding, and it is unfolding in a way neither of you could have predicted. The truth about you was only the first revelation. The truth about themselves was the second. But there is a third revelation approaching, a revelation even larger than the first two, a revelation your person is slowly moving toward. At first, they resisted it, then they questioned it, then they feared it. Now, they are beginning to accept it, because every road inside them keeps leading back to the same place, back to the same realization, back to the same name, back to the same connection. Back to you. And that realization has become impossible to outrun. Something huge is waiting beyond that understanding. Something heaven has been preparing quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, the way heaven often works, through subtle movements, unexpected thoughts, perfect timing, invisible alignment. And your person is standing closer to that moment than they realize. Closer than they have ever been, because there is one memory, one specific memory, that heaven keeps bringing back to them, a memory they tried to dismiss, a memory they thought was insignificant, a memory connected to a moment between you that seemed ordinary at the time, but now, that memory keeps returning, again, and again, and again. Why? Because hidden inside that memory is a truth they have not fully uncovered yet, a truth so important that heaven refuses to let it remain buried. And when they finally understand what that moment truly meant, when they finally understand what you were trying to show them, when they finally connect all the pieces, the decision they make afterward may change everything. But that revelation has not fully arrived. Not yet. It is approaching, it is unfolding, it is getting closer, and what happens when it finally reaches them is where the next chapter begins.